Even though it started almost 3 years ago, I can still vividly remember the feeling. It happened one night after a choir concert. I was sitting in my favorite chair doing my homework when I felt this terrible pain in my right side. The pain was so bad it crippled me over. At first, I thought it was just a cramp, but after 5 minutes and no relief, I started getting worried. My first reaction that night was to call my parents for help. When they saw that I couldn't stand or unfurl my curled up body, they decided the emergency room was the right choice. The only question was what hospital to go to. We live about 20 miles from 3 hospitals, but which one would be the best? My parents decided to call the Rock Rapids Hospital to see if they could help us. The secretary on the line told us that they could only call someone once we got there. To me, that didn't seem like a very good option. My pain was getting worse by the minute. So, we decided to go to the only hospital that could help us immediately, Sioux Falls. We drove to Sioux Falls as fast as we could. The whole time I was curled in the back seat, groaning at every bump. Once we got there, they took me in immediately, hooked me up to an IV and PET scan, and the results were conclusive. My appendix needed to come out, and soon. By that time, it was 3 in the morning, so they put me on a morphine drip to wait until they complete the appendectomy. 4 hours later, I was whisked away to surgery. When I woke up after the surgery, I still felt terrible. The doctors assured me that it was normal and released me from the hospital a day later. 1 week later, I came back to the hospital for my post-surgery checkup. I still wasn't recovering. 1 month later, I still hadn't recovered. My physical condition was the same as when I came out of surgery. I could barely walk and my abdomen hurt all the time. I could find no relief to my pain. Initially, I suspected that something must have gone wrong during the appendectomy, but I was assured again and again by every doctor that it could not have been the cause. If something would have gone wrong, the poisonous fluids inside the appendix would have killed you on sight, so you'd be dead by now. Don't worry. That's not the problem. Well, since I wasn't dead, they rolled it out as an option. Some thought it was suspicious that the scars I had from my surgery were on my left side instead of my right, since there's no appendectomies ever to be on record to have been done from the left side, but still, that wasn't enough to make any doctor check into if the appendectomy had been done correctly. Eventually, I could live with the pain no longer, so I gave up on my appendectomy theory and went with what the doctors would come up with for a diagnosis to cause my pain. I went to specialists in many different areas, but none of them could help. It seemed that every doctor had their own theory as to the source of the pain. At first, they diagnosed it as an orthopedic problem. They thought it was pain caused by the iliac crest bone of the hip. To remedy this problem, they gave me hip injections by x-ray to make sure they get exactly into the hip joint. When that didn't work, they blamed the pain on my back. When that didn't work, I had one leg that was longer than the other. Then orthotics because of lack of arch support. At last, the last orthopedic solution was, you have arthritis in your back and hips. Each orthotic diagnosis was followed by hours of physical therapy at 3 different locations, and again, no relief. As the solutions came, the pain continued to grow worse and worse and worse. Eventually, I was unable to produce a bowel movement and at various intervals, unable to urinate. When the doctors were told about these complications, they started in on the gastrointestinal phase of the diagnosis. I went to see the gastrointestinal specialist where I had a colonoscopy to determine the condition of my gastrointestinal tract. The colonoscopy, besides being the most pleasant experience you have ever experienced, and the lovely liquid you get to take, go lightly, found gastritis, enteritis, and ulcers in the duodenum of the small intestine and the ileocecal valve. In other words, my intestines were a mess. Consequently, that's the part of the body that would need to be crossed to pull an appendix out from the left side of the body instead of the right. Just something to keep in mind. Anyway, this colonoscopy led to the diagnosis of Crohn's disease, a chronic disease inflicting the gastrointestinal tract that is usually signified by bloody diarrhea. Immediately it seemed that this was wrong because of my inability to pass a bowel movement, but nonetheless, they put me on 10 different medications and an influx of enemas. I was in and out of the hospital in 4-day sets getting IV treatments to cure up the problem. Again, none of their diagnoses worked. I started to get desperate, going to anyone that would take me. I went to Rochester. I tried acupuncture. I went to the chiropractor. I went through painful test after painful test. And nothing, absolutely absolutely nothing worked. When the doctors couldn't find the solution, they decided there really was no problem at all. They decided that the pain was in my head. Each time I was in the hospital, they sent a psychiatrist to confirm their suspicions. And each psychiatrist came back the same. They said, the pain's real. She's not making it up. But yet, they didn't believe me. After that, they simply refused to see or help me. That is, everyone but the hospital in Rock Rapids. I'd been there so many times, but they didn't give up hope of a solution. In fact, after all of their options ran out, one doctor finally listened to me. She decided to see if it was somehow related to my appendectomy. She ran some more tests, but they all came back negative. Still, she thought that it might be right, so she convinced a surgeon from Laverne, Minnesota to come talk to me. The next day, I met with this surgeon. His name was Dr. Smith, and in my opinion, he's the best surgeon in the world. He explained to me that somehow the test can come back negative because it cannot see the inside of the organs, only the outside, and he agreed to operate on me the next day. I arrived the next day, calm and ready to be done with this horrible ordeal. I had the surgery done in Laverne, and it was unlike any hospital experience I have ever had or had since. I was assigned to 2 private nurses to take care of me. If I was cold, they brought me a heater. If I needed an IV, they numbed the area so it wouldn't hurt. Nowhere else had I been treated half as nice as I was when I was in Laverne. And the surgery was a complete success. The first thing I said when I woke up was, I feel great. Just after the surgery, I felt better than I had in 2.5 years. And I couldn't even sit up because they had cut through my abdominal muscles. That explains exactly how bad I hurt before. Later in the week, I was back up and running like a normal human being. It turns out that he removed adhesions and such from my intestinal walls and also removed my gallbladder, which had been completely destroyed by the fluid that was in my appendix. He concluded that the cause of my pain had been the infected fluid from the appendix, which had spread across my abdomen to be pulled out the wrong side of my body. I had a full and complete recovery. I can now run and walk without pain. I can sit and watch a movie without pain. I can again enjoy things in life. I can pick up again where I left off during my freshman year in high school when this first all